Welcome back to the Hanging with the Hoopers podcast. Andrew and Tim Hooper, your hosts. We're really excited for our next episode. And Tim, what are we talking about today?
As always, Andrew, the attitude of leadership. And what better way to think about attitude than tone of voice, and the words we say. So today, we're talking about our words and how they matter.
It's a great topic.
Yeah.
Words do matter. And what got us thinking about this was some of the conversations we've been having with good friends and colleagues recently, leaders that we work with, around some of the ways that things are presented. So just perspective, like let's set the stage, right? Something's not going well within the organization. At some level. Could be the market right now in real estate. We're dealing with a normalization / downturn in the market through this year. Probably going to go on for a few years. In other industries, if you're in finance, things of that nature, there's ups and downs constantly. Or maybe just within your internal operations and systems in your organization, there's some things that aren't happening as they should. So I was talking with a good friend the other day, and he's like, listen, like things have been going pretty smoothly at work. Then all of a sudden, my manager goes to this manager's meeting, and they come back, and all of a sudden we're having this come to Jesus meeting. And the whole thing revolves around, hey, if you guys don't get your you-know-what together, you could cost me my job. So that got me thinking, right? We talk a lot about leadership and words that we use. And as a leader, to me, that's a little mind-boggling because we're making it all about ourselves if we have that kind of a conversation with our team. But in my head, I'm like, okay, so I always like to go back to the root of something. Why did we have to get to that point where we felt as a leader we had to make it about us? So what wasn't happening consistently? What words weren't we using with our team? So we didn't have to get to a point where we're kind of threatening them or making them feel like, hey, you guys need to step up or else I could lose my job. I just think that's a bad approach.
And it's that you, in that illustration you just gave, there's that you and I. Right. You did, I'm going to lose, right? So it's a you versus me.
Yeah.
And I think right away we see this, there's a mentality of me, you versus we and us. If we have that togetherness approach, we're one cohesive unit, and that leadership is a privilege to serve others as opposed to this right to serve myself, or self-serving or self-centered for that matter, then I think our entire tone shifts. And I think our tone is set by the words we choose. So again, it comes back to awareness, being a self-aware leader, and just looking at some of the words you choose. So I'm sure you have stories of being in that. I know your buddy was telling you. What are some scenarios where maybe you saw that in somebody else or even in yourself early on in your career? And how did you build that or overcome that self-centered leader?
I think...
Or the tone that it's at.
Yeah. Personally, for me, being in different organizations, I think it's easy for an employee to tell if the leader is doing it for themselves, for their own benefit, so they don't get in trouble, versus if the leader is doing it for you, the people. And it does come back to the words you use and the choices of words. Are you sitting there saying, well, if you guys don't do this, then I? Right? Another example, something I've seen a lot is, someone's asking for a day off unexpectedly, something to do with the family or something of that nature. And instead of, as a leader, being empathetic and thinking about we and us as a family, the response is, well, I haven't taken vacation in a year, right? And it's like, why do you know? I haven't called out.
That's a big one.
So we're like comparing.
I hear that one a lot.
Yeah, actually. That one's pretty common. Another thing I used to hear, there was actually someone, I didn't work for them, but I worked with them, and I was a part of one of their team meetings, and they were leading their team in this meeting, and they were upset about some operational penalty they had received based on some operational downfalls. And, their message to their team was, hey, guys, don't mess with my bonus. You're messing with my bonus. You mess with my bonus, I'm not going to be happy. I'm not happy. Wow. You guys aren't happy.
Wow.
So, what message does that send to your team, right? When you're rolling in the parking lot in a Maserati every day and your team is driving in a Fiat, And they're not 6'2" for any of you that are on TikTok nowadays. I'm kidding. Sorry, I had to go there. But what message does that really send, right?
Right.
So those are just some examples of how those things can verbalize. And I don't know that your team is ever, if you're a leader listening to this, I don't know that your team is ever going to come to you and have that conversation with you about, hey, these things you're saying are very self-centered. I think you, at some level, need to check yourself on that. And you need to look at your body of work and do you do those things?
Mm-hmm.
Because you have to correct it. That's a very uncomfortable conversation for an employee to try to have with their boss, even if they have a good relationship with the boss.
Yeah.
Like, hey, the way you came across in that meeting was super self-centered.
Right.
Like, who's going to want to go say something like that to their boss? So from a leadership perspective, how do you deal with it? Self-awareness. Think about the words you're using. So I know you probably have a ton of thoughts based on all of that. So,
well, I want to say a ton of thoughts. I think that it does come down ultimately to humility and just being able to say, I know, because I'll tell you right now, I can't improve my word selection, right? I know I can. We all can, but I have the ability to choose my words. So one thing we've always done, and get into our past a little bit, Andrew and I come from a really big family. And I never forget our piano teacher, Krista. If you're listening to this, Krista, big shout out to you. Your patience with my big clunky fingers. But I'll never forget, she made an observation one day. She was watching all of us like gather around the dinner table. I think she had come over for dinner with Matt. And there's like all of us siblings in the room. I mean, we're like a huge family. And she made this observation. She said, you guys talk really fast because you have to fit in what you need to say. And it really made me become self-aware. I never realized I talked fast. I always remember this joke when, Dad would speak. He'd say, I talk fast, so listen fast, right?
Right.
And that's fine. I mean, mannerisms and whatnot. And talking fast isn't necessarily bad. She just made that observation. And when she made that observation, it was the first time I ever paid attention to the rate of my speech. Of course, I took speech class later, and you learn. And then I now have a speaking coach as I speak professionally. And so you learn how to do the pauses and slow the pace, elaborate a certain point. So there's all those tricks, but even just naturally when I'm not speaking, I don't necessarily just think. Andrew and I are in the car. We're driving across cities, right, and running the Mid-Atlantic, and we're just talking. Sometimes that's easier to just go default to regular rate of speech, and also regular just words, or maybe poor choice or just default choice.
Yeah.
And so my thoughts come down to just being able to be humble. Sometimes you throw a word out there, and there's nothing better as a leader than to say, you know what? Let me snatch that word choice back. That's the wrong word choice. Right? I've done that with you before. I'm like, nope, that's not right. Here's one I use sometimes: always or never.
Yeah.
And I know we all say, don't never use always, never use never. Well, sometimes it happens. And sometimes it's not the person you're talking to. Sometimes you're talking about something else or some situation or whatever.
Right.
So to check yourself when that word comes out, just to be aware that I just said always, and that's probably not true. I've done it in conversations with my wife when we've been a little off and we're talking. I will pull back my word I chose and said, nope, that's the wrong word. Because you do this really well this way. And I think, so just the humility, and trust me, I'm not always there and definitely working to do a better job, but I think we could all get better in our words. And then we all have an ego. Let's be honest, we all do. Andrew, you made the point earlier that it's about my bonus, or it's about don't do that to me, versus let me share something that makes us all better, makes the customer experience better, makes our branch shine. Here's the difference. It's either ego or it's excellence. Right? If you're driven towards excellence, then your word choice can be more concise. You're not all fawning over yourself or even fawning over others. It's just, here's what needs to improve, because it's all about excellence. And I'm going to be the first one to admit that I'm not there. I can improve, and together we can get better so that the collective experience is better, other than what you described earlier. That ego-driven tone, and our heart. What is the proverb that says, out of the abundance of your heart, the mouth speaks?
Right.
And so how we believe and think in our heart is leadership a privilege that we get to serve others, or is it a position that I get to serve myself?
Right. More money, whatever it might be for you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So those are my thoughts on.
Well, how do you deal with
Words
that?
matter.
So say you're
Yeah.
being self-aware. You're like, you know what? I sometimes fall into that trap.
Mhm.
I'm frustrated. Maybe it's kind of a knee-jerk reaction, and I'm having these types of conversations with the people who work
Yeah.
for me.
Yeah.
Or even the people that you work with. So think about the impacts.
Yep.
A, to your client. B, to the teammates.
Yeah.
And then to the bottom line.
Yes.
And then to yourself.
Yep.
Right? As a leader, your impact should be no one on your team cares about it. You make a lot more money than they do. They probably think you come and go as you please, et cetera, so on.
Right. Right.
So your concern should be at the back of the pack.
Yeah.
But you start with your mission. Like, have you actually prioritized who needs to be impacted from what you do in your business first? Is it the customer or is it your team? What's your priority there? And then start with them, right? So if there is some sort of breakdown, you already said it, but you name the impacts. In a pursuit of excellence, if XYZ is happening consistently, here are the risks to our clients.
Right.
Here's where we open our team up to less than excellence or the errors that are happening that can impact your teammate in a negative way.
Yep.
And then here's how, if we don't do these things, here's how it impacts the bottom line.
Yeah.
Right. And then you shouldn't even bring up how it impacts you as a leader. Because honestly, if you're talking about those three things consistently,
correct,
and you're coaching your team on those things consistently with the right why, with the right impacts, you never have to get to it. You're not going to be impacted. You're going to see the big bonuses. You're going to not lose your job.
That's all lagging stuff. Yeah.
It's all lagging stuff. So
you said it amazing. This is how our customer is impacted. This is how we grow as a team, right? Use we, us. I think it's just being aware. Am I using I and you and me? Or is it us and we? Is it this together?
Replace I and me with us and we.
I think that's
Say that 3 times fast.
and also the you, right?
Yeah.
Is so powerful when you can improve or we can improve, because then you're not singling people out.
Correct.
Right. Another thing with words, which is so powerful, and this actually is a little bit of a rabbit trail, but we'll come back real fast.
I love rabbit trails.
If you're going to give somebody like an improvement tip, do that in private. Give them the benefit of the doubt. If you line up a huddle, if you have a daily huddle or a morning huddle or something along those lines, to call somebody out, hey, you need to do a better job at, again, you, right?
It's demoralizing.
So if it needs done or needs said in a group, then it's we can do a better job at, right? You need to do, or we can do a better job. And then one-on-one with that person could just be, hey, I'd noticed. And like we talked about in our earlier podcast, right? It's just, here are the numbers, here's the metrics, here's a trend I'm seeing. We really need to improve it. Right. And again, we need to improve this. How can I support you in doing that? So our word choice is so powerful, especially when it comes to the pronouns, right? We, us versus I, me, or you. So very powerful. Well, now, you did a great job. We did a great job. Now I think you should get a little bit more personal with.
So you talked about it. So here's an easy phrase. You probably heard this before, but praise in public and criticize in private.
Yeah,
right.
It's huge.
And when you're praising, you're not praising yourself. You're not saying I'm the best.
Yeah,
you're the best. Like, you crushed it. You did, and that's fine in a public setting if that person is okay with public recognition. But some people also get uncomfortable to be singled out for something because they feel like it puts them on a pedestal in front of the whole entire team. So again, it goes back to knowing your people. But when you're dealing with, I think the whole premise of this conversation is when dealing with an issue or something that we kind of set that stage, right? The numbers aren't where you want them to be. There's been some issues. There's been some breakdowns. You may have some bad customer feedback, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Yep.
How are we responding? Do we go to that default mode of, hey, you guys are making me look bad to my manager, to my leader, or you're making me, you're costing me money?
Yep.
Or is it, hey, here's the impact to the customer. Here's how it makes our business look as a team, right?
Yep.
That's a whole different conversation.
Whole different.
Our team, not me.
Yep.
And you really find a much more productive method of communicating.
Yes.
Now, again, if you're having these conversations consistently, it shouldn't get to a point where you have to have this big come to Jesus meeting.
Yeah, huge.
Because you've been proactive in the way that you're having these conversations.
Right. Well, it's either a model of excellence or a lack of a model, and you have ego usually in that situation. So just an ego check for all of us, right?
Good stuff.
And pursue excellence in our
As always.
speech, in our words, in our tone of voice, and you'll see your team really open up and blossom.
Agreed.
It's a good conversation, Hoop.
Once again, thanks, Little Hoop.
Love you, man.
Love you too.